Is this your cultural advisor?
The French billionaire stared at the black woman in the meeting room. He burst into laughter.
A maid? You brought a black maid to sit opposite me? What does this black whore know how to do besides publicly scrub toilets?
Eyes fixed on him, he stopped laughing. He pulled out a 6-page document, all in French. He pushed it across the table, straight into her face.
$2 million. She reads this, translate it perfectly in 30 minutes. I sign, otherwise I'm leaving.
She took the document, calmly, and began to read, in perfect French. His smile vanished. His face turned pale. But translating his document was only the beginning. What she did next in that meeting room, he never expected. 3 weeks earlier, 11:42 at night. The executive floor of Caldwell & Moore was empty. The lights were dimmed. The hallways were silent, except for the sound of a cleaning cart rolling across tile. Tiana Brooks pushed her cart past the corner conference room. Same route she took every night. Same invisible routine. But tonight, something was different. The conference room door was cracked open. Inside, a speakerphone sat on the table, still live. A red light blinked in the dark. Someone had forgotten to hang up. A voice was coming through, fast, agitated, speaking in a foreign language. It was a lawyer from Fontaine's legal team in Paris, dictating revised terms for the $340 million deal. Tiana stopped her cart. She stood in the doorway, listening. She understood every single word, not just the meaning, the legal structure, the clause references, the intent behind the phrasing. And that's when she caught it. The lawyer referenced a clause number, but it was from an outdated draft. The wrong version. If Caldwell & Moore responded to that clause, they'd be negotiating against terms that didn't exist anymore. The mistake could cost them tens of millions. Tiana stood there for a long time. The ventilation hummed above her. Cold coffee sat forgotten in a mug on the table. The red light kept blinking. She was a janitor. Nobody asked for her opinion. Nobody even knew she existed past the second floor. If she said anything, she could lose the only job she had. She pulled out a small, beaten-up notebook from her back pocket. The cover was worn soft. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, vocabulary, grammar charts, phrases in 9 different languages. She tore off a Post-it note, wrote down the correct clause number, wrote a short, precise translation of the key sentence, stuck it to the speakerphone, and she left. No name, no explanation, just the truth in perfect handwriting. 7:30 the next morning, an analyst named Nadia Osman walked into that conference room. She saw the Post-it. The translation was flawless. The correction was accurate. Nadia looked at the note, then at the cleaning cart, still parked in the hallway. She whispered to herself, "Who wrote this?" The next evening, Nadia stayed late on purpose. She wasn't working. She was waiting. She had spent the entire day staring at that Post-it note, turning it over in her fingers. The handwriting was small, neat, precise, and the translation was better than anything the firm's paid linguist had ever delivered. A janitor didn't write this. That's what she told herself. But the cleaning cart in the hallway told a different story. At 9:15, she heard the vacuum. She followed the sound to the 38th floor and found a young black woman in a dark blue polo, name badge clipped to her chest, pushing a vacuum across the carpet. Nadia held up the Post-it. "Did you write this?" Tiana switched off the vacuum. She didn't make eye contact. Her shoulders pulled inward, the posture of someone who had already decided she was in trouble. "I shouldn't have touched anything. I'm sorry. Sorry? Nadia stared at her. This translation is better than what our contracted linguist submitted. Where did you study? Tiana was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, I didn't study. Not officially. Nadia didn't believe her. Not yet. She pulled out her phone and played a voicemail. It was from a German client, a complaint about shipping logistics, full of technical terms, spoken fast and clipped. Tiana listened once, just once. Then she translated it, out loud, in real time, into clean, precise English. She didn't just give the meaning, she caught the tone. She noted the speaker was from southern Germany based on his accent, and she said he wasn't angry, just frustrated. There was a difference. Nadia's face changed. She played a second clip. This one was in Arabic, a North African dialect. Tiana translated it immediately. Then she paused and said, That's Tunisian, by the way, not Egyptian. The vowel shifts are different. Nadia played a third. This time it was in Mandarin. A business negotiation. Dense, layered, full of idioms. Tiana translated it. Then she stopped on one phrase and said, This expression doesn't have a direct English equivalent. It could mean mutual compromise or saving face for both sides. Depends on who's saying it and why. In this context, I'd go with the second one. Nadia sat down. She didn't say anything for a long time. The fluorescent lights buzzed above them. Tiana stood in her cleaning uniform, mop clipped to her belt, name badge catching the light. She looked like every other janitor in the building. But what had just come out of her mouth didn't match anything about the way she looked. How many languages do you speak? Tiana hesitated. 9. Then she corrected herself. 8.5. My Japanese still has gaps in the formal register. 9 languages. No degree. No training program. No study abroad. Just a woman in a cleaning uniform who taught herself from library books and late-night videos, while the rest of the city slept. Nadia stared at her like she was seeing a ghost. Then she told Tiana about the deal. The Fontaine contract. The 44-page document the firm had been struggling with for weeks, written by the same man who had walked through the lobby and told her she wasn't worth looking at. Tiana's expression shifted. She knew exactly who Fontaine was. She remembered his voice, his words, the way he looked at her like she was part of the furniture. Would you look at the document? Nadia asked. Tiana didn't answer right away. Her hand gripped the handle of her mop. I can't get in trouble. This job is all I have. You won't, I promise. A long silence. The hum of the building around them. The distant sound of an elevator arriving on another floor. Tiana nodded. Slowly, but her hand didn't let go of the mop. Not yet. Because agreeing to look at that document meant stepping into a world that had never made room for someone like her. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she could still hear Fontaine's voice. The man who told her she could do nothing but scrub toilets had no idea. She had just read his lawyer's mind. Tiana didn't learn languages in a classroom. She learned them on a train. Or at least, that's where it started. Her grandfather, Reginald Brooks, was a Pullman porter in the 1960s. He carried luggage for wealthy passengers, diplomats, professors, businessmen who never bothered to learn his name. But Reggie listened. He listened to everything. He picked up French from a Haitian diplomat who rode the same route every month. German from a professor who tipped in conversation instead of cash. Spanish from the kitchen staff who fed him when the passengers wouldn't. He never finished school past 8th grade. But by the time he was 40, Reggie Brooks spoke 4 languages, and not a single person in his life knew what to do with that. He used to sit young Tiana on his knee and say, A language is a door, baby girl. Every door you open, somebody on the other side is waiting to finally be understood. He gave her a small notebook, a moleskin with a soft black cover. He had filled the first 30 pages himself. French vocabulary, phonetic notes, little phrases he picked up from passengers who never looked him in the eye. Tiana's handwriting begins on page 31, the year he died. She was 11. After Reggie passed, Tiana's grandmother raised her alone. Her mother was incarcerated. Money was never enough. College was never an option. She was identified as gifted in 4th grade, but the school lost funding for the program that same year. The door opened and closed in the same breath. At 18, she applied for a linguistics scholarship at the University of Chicago. She was waitlisted, then rejected. The rejection letter is still folded inside the moleskin. She never threw it away. She took the janitor job at Caldwell & Moore because it was night shift. That meant her days were free to sit in the public library and teach herself another language, and another, and another. Every night before her shift, she sat in the break room and read for exactly 20 minutes. Rotating languages, Russian on Mondays, Portuguese on Tuesdays, Arabic on Wednesdays. The other janitors thought she was strange. One of them once pointed at her books and called them decoration. She didn't argue. She just turned the page. 2 nights later, Nadia brought Tiana to an empty conference room on the 40th floor. It felt different up here. The carpet was thicker. The chairs were leather. The windows stretched floor to ceiling, the whole city glittering below like it was holding its breath. Tiana had cleaned this room hundreds of times. She knew which chair wobbled. She knew the scratch on the table near seat 4. She knew the smell. Cedar, leather, old money. But tonight, she wasn't here to clean. On the table sat a 44-page document, bound, stamped confidential. Every word written in dense, formal French. The Fontaine contract. Caldwell & Moore had been struggling with this document for 2 weeks. Their contracted translation firm had delivered a version full of errors. The internal team's French wasn't strong enough for the legal nuance. And Edmond Fontaine, the man who wrote it, had made his position clear. If you can't read my language, you don't deserve my business. Nadia slid the document across the table. Take your time. Tiana opened to the first page. Her eyes moved across the text. She didn't speak for a full minute. Then she started. Page 3. She pointed to a single word. This word. They translated it as enjoyment. That's wrong. In legal French, it means the right to use and profit from someone else's property. Completely different. The way it's translated now, the entire financial obligation changes. Nadia leaned forward. Page 12. Tiana ran her finger along the clause buried inside a larger paragraph. This sentence is hiding something. There's a subordinate clause here that creates an ambiguity about who takes on the liability if the deal falls apart. Your translation team missed it entirely. But Fontaine's lawyers didn't miss it. They put it there on purpose. Nadia's breathing changed. Page 29. Tiana stopped, read the passage twice. Then she looked up. This reference, it's pointing to a section of French commercial law. But your translators interpreted it using American legal framework. Those aren't the same thing. Under French law, this clause means the opposite of what your team thinks it means. Nadia set her phone on the table. Can I record this? Tiana hesitated, then nodded. For the next 40 minutes, Tiana moved through the document page by page. She identified 11 critical errors. She retranslated 6 key passages aloud, not word for word, but with full legal comprehension. She explained the intent behind the phrasing. She flagged sentences where Fontaine's lawyers had deliberately used ambiguity as leverage. She didn't just read the document, she took it apart. When she finished, the room was silent. Nadia's voice was tight. "Do you understand what just happened? Our team, 3 translators and a legal consultant, couldn't do what you just did in 40 minutes. Tiana looked down at her hands, ink-stained fingers resting on pages written by the man who told her she was worth nothing. "I just read it," she said. "That's all." Nadia stared at her, then at the document, then back at her. "I need to show this to someone." Tiana's face changed. The calm broke, just for a second. "No, please. I'll get fired. They'll think I was snooping through confidential files." "Or," Nadia said quietly, "they'll realize you just saved a $340 million deal." Tiana didn't respond. She looked at the document one more time. Then she looked out the window, at the city below, the same city she rode the bus through every night in her cleaning uniform. Nadia didn't promise to stay quiet. She didn't promise to share the recording either. She just said, "Let me think about it." And Tiana walked back to her cart, alone, wondering if the worst mistake of her life had just been made. Nadia didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, replaying the recording on her phone. Tiana's voice, calm, precise, almost mechanical in its accuracy, cutting through 44 pages of legal French like it was a children's book. By 6 in the morning, she had made her decision. She went to Derek Whitmore first, chain of command. He was Senior VP of International Acquisitions, the man running the Fontaine deal. If anyone needed to hear this, it was him. She sat in his office, pressed play. Derek listened for about 90 seconds. Then he held up his hand. "Who is this? One of the new hires from Northwestern?" Nadia paused the recording. "No, she works in facilities. Night custodial." The room went cold. Derek blinked. Then he laughed. Not a kind laugh. The kind of laugh people use when they want you to feel stupid for what you just said. "You're telling me a cleaning lady? A cleaning lady found errors that our $600 an hour translation firm missed?" 11 errors in 40 minutes. He leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightened. And where did she get access to a confidential document exactly? She heard a voicemail on a speakerphone that someone left on, so she was snooping. She was emptying trash cans, Derek. He stood up, walked to the window, hands in his pockets. When he turned back around, his face had changed. The amusement was gone. What replaced it was something colder. "Listen to me carefully, Nadia. Fontaine is the most important client this firm has touched in a decade. The man is difficult. He is arrogant. And if he finds out we had a janitor handling his confidential documents, he won't just kill this deal. He'll make sure every firm in the country hears about it." He sat back down, folded his hands. "I'm flagging this to facilities management as a security concern." Nadia's stomach dropped. "You're punishing her? She caught a mistake that could have cost us the entire deal." "I'm protecting the firm. There's a difference." 2 days later, Tiana was called into her supervisor's office. She was told her access badge had been restricted. Floors 1 through 20 only. No more executive floors. No explanation. Just a new badge and a form to sign. She signed it, without a word. That night, she sat in the break room with the moleskin in her lap. She didn't open it. She just held it. The way you hold something when you're trying to decide if it still means anything. The vending machine hummed beside her. The clock on the wall ticked. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window. Still wearing the uniform. Still invisible. Meanwhile, Nadia was back at her desk, furious. She had confronted Derek one more time. "If she's really that talented," he had said, almost gently, "she can apply through the proper channels, like everyone else. She doesn't have a degree." Derek shrugged. "Well, there you go." 3 words, said like a period at the end of a sentence. The kind of sentence that keeps people exactly where they are, forever. Nadia stared at her computer screen. Her cursor blinked over Grant Caldwell's calendar. The CEO, the co-founder, the one man in the building who might actually listen. She typed a meeting request. Subject line, urgent, Fontaine acquisition, translation integrity issue. Her finger hovered over the send button. She thought about her career, her mortgage, her reputation. Then she thought about Tiana, sitting alone in a break room, holding a notebook full of 9 languages, being told she didn't qualify. She hit send. The next morning, the deal fell apart. Not slowly, not quietly. It blew up. Fontaine's team in Paris sent back an 8-page response, every word in French. The tone was brutal. They rejected 3 clauses outright, accused Caldwell and Moore of either incompetence or bad faith, said the translated counterproposal was so poorly done it bordered on disrespectful. One line stood out. Fontaine himself had written it, in his own hand, at the bottom of the final page. "If your firm cannot even read my language, how can I trust you with my capital?" The internal team scrambled. Phone calls, emergency meetings, coffee cups piling up like casualties. The contracted translation firm said they needed 5 business days to turn around a proper response. Fontaine gave them 48 hours. Derek Whitmore was sweating through his shirt by noon. This was his deal. His name was on every memo, every projection, every promise made to the board. If Fontaine walked, Derek's career walked with him. And he had just banned the only person who could actually read the document from the building's upper floors. That afternoon, Grant Caldwell got pulled in. Grant had been semi-removed from day-to-day operations for the past year. He trusted his team. He gave them room. But when he opened Nadia's email and listened to the recording she had attached, he didn't move for a long time. He played it twice. Then he took off his reading glasses, set them on the desk, folded his hands, and he said 5 words. "Get her in here. Now." That evening, Tiana was sitting at her kitchen table, a small apartment in Inglewood, peeling paint on the window frame, a second-hand lamp casting yellow light across the table. The moleskin was open in front of her. She was studying Portuguese verb conjugations, the same thing she did every evening before her shift, the same quiet ritual nobody knew about. Her phone rang. It was Nadia. "Can you come to the office? Right now. Not for your shift, for something else." Tiana's hand stopped on the page. She looked at the notebook, looked at the rejection letter from the University of Chicago still tucked inside the back cover, looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. "What floor?" "The 40th. A pause. A long one. "My badge doesn't work past 20. Nadia's voice was steady. "It will tonight." Tiana sat there after the call ended. The apartment was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. A siren passed somewhere outside, distant, then gone. She turned to page 31 of the moleskin, the page where her handwriting begins, where her grandfather's ends. She pressed her fingers against the ink, his ink, like she was touching his hand one more time. Then she closed the notebook, put on her coat, and walked out the door. She didn't take the cleaning uniform. For the first time in 3 years, Tiana Brooks was going to the 40th floor, not to mop it, not to empty its trash cans, not to scrub its baseboards on her knees while Billionaire stepped over her. She was going because someone had finally asked her to sit down. But she wasn't thinking about the deal. She wasn't thinking about the money, or the firm, or the 44-page document waiting for her in a conference room that smelled like cedar and leather. She was thinking about Fontaine, his voice, his face, the way he'd looked at her in the lobby like she was less than nothing. And she was thinking about something her grandfather once told her, a long time ago, on a train, in a language no one expected him to speak. They can take your job, but they can't take your vocabulary. She arrived at 8:15. No uniform, no mop, no badge that said facilities. Just a clean blouse, dark pants, and a messenger bag with the moleskin inside. Craig Patterson was standing at the security desk near the elevator. He saw her coming and stepped forward, the way security guards do when something doesn't match. "Ma'am, this floor requires executive clearance." Tiana stopped. She didn't argue. She'd been stopped before, in stores, in lobbies, in places where people like her weren't expected. Then Nadia appeared behind the desk. "She's with me." Craig looked at Tiana, looked at Nadia, looked at Tiana again, like he was trying to place her face. Then he stepped aside. The elevator ride was silent. 40 floors. Tiana watched the numbers climb. She had ridden this elevator 1,000 times with her cart. She knew the way it hummed between floors 20 and 21. She knew the flicker of the light at 36. She knew the smell of cedar that seeped in around floor 39. But tonight, it all felt foreign, like the building had changed shape around her. The doors opened, the 40th floor. Grant Caldwell was standing in the doorway of his corner office. Not behind his desk, not in his chair. Standing, waiting for her. He extended his hand. "Miss Brooks, thank you for coming on such short notice." She shook it. Her grip was firm. Her fingers were trembling. He gestured to a chair. She sat. He handed her the 8-page rejection letter from Fontaine, the one that had set the building on fire that morning. "Take your time." She read. The room was silent. Just the sound of pages turning and the distant hum of the city 40 floors below. 12 minutes. Then she looked up. "He's not rejecting the deal. He's testing you." The language in paragraph 4 is deliberately aggressive. It's a negotiation tactic, common in French commercial culture. The word he used, your team translated it as unacceptable. But in this context, it doesn't mean that. It means not yet accepted. He's leaving the door open. He's waiting for you to push back. She paused, then added, quieter, "He also enjoys making people feel small. That's not a tactic. That's just who he is." Grant leaned back, took off his reading glasses, studied her for a long moment. "How long have you worked in this building?" 3 years, sir." "And in 3 years, no one knew?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Grant nodded slowly. Then he said the words that changed everything. "I'd like you in the room when we respond to Fontaine. Not as a translator, as a cultural advisor. Tiana's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm a janitor, Mr. Caldwell." He looked at her, not through her, not past her, but directly at her. "You're a janitor who happens to be the most qualified person in this building for this conversation. Those aren't the same thing." Then he did something small, something no one else would think twice about. He picked up a visitor badge, wrote her name on it, by hand, in ink, and slid it across the desk. "Welcome to the 40th floor, Miss Brooks." That night, after everyone left, Tiana stayed. She sat alone in the conference room, the Fontaine file spread across the table in front of her. Her phone was propped against a coffee cup, open to a legal reference site. She was cross-checking clauses, comparing frameworks, making notes in the moleskin, the same notebook her grandfather had started 50 years ago on a train. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists on the 40th floor after midnight. No phones, no voices, no footsteps. Just the hum of glass and steel holding the sky in place. Then the door opened. Nadia walked in with 2 cups of coffee, not from the break room on the 2nd floor, from the executive kitchen. The good coffee. The kind Tiana had smelled 1,000 times while emptying the trash, but never once tasted. She set one down in front of Tiana, sat across from her, and for the first time since they met, they talked. Not about the deal, not about Fontaine, about themselves. Nadia went first. "I was the first person in my family to go to college. Got my MBA. Did everything right, checked every box." She paused. "And still, when I walk onto this floor every morning, there's a part of me that feels like I'm pretending." Tiana looked at her.
"You know what the difference between us is?"
Nadia said.
"You're the real thing. I needed a piece of paper to prove I belong here. You just belong."
Tiana didn't respond right away. She opened the moleskin to page 31, the page where Reggie's handwriting stops and hers begins. She turned it so Nadia could see. "My granddad used to say, 'They can take your job, but they can't take your vocabulary.'" They both laughed. Quiet. Real. The first time Tiana had laughed in this entire story. Then the silence came back. A comfortable one. Tiana stared at the city lights below. "He looked right through me, Nadia, in that lobby, like I was part of the floor." Nadia nodded. "Good." Tiana looked at her. "That means he won't see you coming." Tiana almost smiled. Almost. Nadia glanced down at the moleskin. She noticed something tucked into the back cover, a folded piece of paper, soft at the edges from being handled too many times. The rejection letter from the University of Chicago. She didn't mention it. She just reached across the table and put her hand on Tiana's arm, held it there for a moment. 2 black women, sitting in a room that was never built for either of them, drinking coffee that was never meant for them. Tomorrow, everything would change. The only question was, for whom? 9 o'clock the next morning. The conference room on the 40th floor was full. Grant Caldwell sat at the head of the table. Arthur Moore, the 70-year-old co-founder, had come out of semi-retirement for this. Derek Whitmore was there, jaw tight, 2 buttons undone, looking like a man who hadn't slept. Nadia sat near the middle, hands folded, eyes focused. 2 junior associates, a legal counsel, a pitcher of water no one touched. And in the back of the room, One chair set slightly behind the others sat Tiana Brooks. No cleaning uniform, no mop, no cart. Just a pressed blouse, dark slacks, and a visitor badge with her name handwritten on it. Derek had seen her the moment he walked in. He leaned toward Grant. "Who authorized this? She's custodial staff. This is a $340 million negotiation." Grant didn't look at him. "She's here because I asked her to be. Sit down, Derek." The screen flickered on. Edmond Fontaine appeared from his Paris office, silver hair, navy suit. An oil painting hung behind him, old money framing old power. His expression was flat, controlled, the face of a man who had already decided this meeting was a formality before he walked away. He greeted the room in French. Derek's associate fumbled through a rehearsed response. Fontaine's eyebrow lifted, just slightly, like a teacher watching a student misspell their own name. Then he switched to English, slow, deliberate, every word chosen to remind the room who held the power. He called the previous translation an embarrassment. He questioned whether the firm had the sophistication to handle his business. He said his time was being wasted, and his time was worth more than everyone in that room combined. Grant listened without expression. Then he spoke. "Mr. Fontaine, I'd like to introduce someone. This is Tiana Brooks, our cultural advisor for this engagement." Fontaine's eyes moved to the back of the room. He saw Tiana, a young black woman, no designer suit, no title he recognized. His face changed. "Is this your cultural advisor?" He stared at her. Then he burst out laughing. "A maid? You brought a black maid to sit across from me?" The room went cold. He turned back to Grant. His voice was full of contempt. "Do you know how insulting this is? This woman scrubs your toilets. What does she know how to do besides clean?" Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Tiana sat still, arms crossed, eyes fixed on Fontaine, steady, unblinking, like a woman who had already been through the worst he could give and was still sitting upright. Fontaine stopped laughing. His expression hardened. He reached off screen and pulled out a 6-page document. Dense, legal, every word in French. He held it up to the camera. "Fine. You want to play this game? Let's play." He shoved the document toward the screen, a gesture meant for Tiana. $2 million. She reads this, translates it perfectly, in 30 minutes. She does it. I sign. She fails. He leaned into the camera. I leave, and I never take a call from this firm again. He smiled, the kind of smile a man gives when he already knows the answer. Let your cleaning lady earn her seat. The document arrived by encrypted email. It appeared on the conference room screen. 6 pages of dense legal French, freshly drafted, never seen before. Grant turned to Tiana. Every eye in the room followed. "Miss Brooks?" She stood, slowly, walked to the screen. Her shoes made no sound on the carpet, the same carpet she had vacuumed 100 times before. She looked at the first page, and she began to read, in flawless French, not hesitant, not searching, fluent, the way a river moves, without effort, without permission. She read the words aloud and then translated them into English, paragraph by paragraph. Not word for word, she captured the legal intent. She explained where French legal conventions differed from American ones. She flagged clauses where the phrasing was deliberately vague, and explained why. The legal counsel started writing, fast. His pen couldn't keep up. Derek's mouth was open. He didn't realize it. On screen, Fontaine's face began to shift. The amusement faded first, then the arrogance. What replaced it was something he clearly wasn't used to. Uncertainty. Then Tiana stopped. Page 4. She read a passage twice, looked up.
Mr. Fontaine, paragraph 12, subsection C.
He blinked. This clause, as written, creates unlimited joint liability for both parties. That means if anything goes wrong, either side bears full financial responsibility. Not partial. Full. She paused. But I don't think that's your intention. The standard phrasing for proportional liability is different. What your legal team wrote here would expose you, not just us, to uncapped risk. The room stopped. On screen, Fontaine leaned forward. He picked up his own copy of the document, found paragraph 12, read it. Then, slowly, he removed his reading glasses. You are correct. His voice was different now, lower, stripped of performance. That was an error made by my own legal team. He looked into the camera, directly at Tiana. Who are you? She met his gaze through the screen, held it. My name is Tiana Brooks. What is your position at this firm, Miss Brooks? The longest silence of the entire story. Every person in that room, on both sides of the Atlantic, held their breath. Then Grant Caldwell spoke. She's our most valuable asset. Fontaine stared, his lips parted. No sound came out. The billionaire who had called her a maid, who had mocked her skin, who had laughed at the idea that she could read, who had bet $2 million that she would fail. He was looking at a woman who had just translated his own document better than his own lawyers and found a mistake they didn't catch. His face went pale, not from anger, from the slow, sickening realization that the woman he had dismissed, the woman he had humiliated in front of a room full of executives, had just saved him from his own contract. Derek Whitmore sat frozen. His face was the same shade of white. But no one was looking at Derek anymore. No one was looking at anyone, except Tiana. Fontaine was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, slowly, carefully, like a man choosing every word for the first time in his life. Mr. Caldwell, I think we have a great deal to discuss. He paused. But first, I would like to speak with Miss Brooks, privately. The room emptied. One by one, the executives stood and left, some quickly, some slowly, all of them unsure what they had just witnessed. Derek was the first out. He didn't look at anyone. He walked straight to the elevator, pressed the button 3 times, and disappeared. Grant nodded to Tiana on his way out. A small nod, the kind a man gives when words aren't enough. Nadia was the last to leave. She squeezed Tiana's shoulder, just once, and closed the door behind her. And then it was just Tiana and a screen. Fontaine sat in his Paris office, 3,000 miles away. For the first time in this story, he looked small. Not physically. The man still filled his chair, still wore his navy suit, still had the oil painting and the mahogany and the old money behind him. But something behind his eyes had cracked. He spoke first, quietly, in French, but the narrator will tell you what he said. Where did you study, Miss Brooks?
Nowhere.
He waited for more. She didn't give him more. You taught yourself.
Yes.
How?
Library books, online lectures, conversation practice with cab drivers, restaurant workers, and a retired professor I met at a laundromat. She paused. And my grandfather. He was a porter on a train. He spoke 4 languages. Nobody ever cared.
Fontaine didn't respond right away. He leaned back in his chair, pressed his fingertips together, stared at her like he was recalculating something that had never needed recalculating before. Then he said it. I owe you an apology, Miss Brooks. She didn't flinch, didn't soften, didn't make it easy for him.
For what, specifically?
The question sat in the air like a blade. Fontaine swallowed. The lobby, 3 weeks ago. I said something I should not have said.
You said I was only good enough to scrub toilets. You called me.
She stopped, let the silence finish the sentence. You assumed I couldn't understand. You were wrong. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had shifted. Not everything, not enough, but something. My grandmother was a seamstress in Lyon, he said. She never finished school. She could negotiate fabric prices in 4 languages. People stepped over her every day of her life. He paused. I forgot that. Somewhere along the way, I forgot. Tiana held his gaze. She didn't forgive him. She didn't say it was okay. She didn't give him the relief of absolution. She just said, "Don't forget again." The call ended. 20 minutes later, Fontaine reconnected with the full team back in the room. His tone was different now. The arrogance was still there. It was part of him, stitched into his voice like an accent he couldn't lose. But the cruelty was gone. He announced that he was proceeding with the partnership. The $2 million signing incentive would stand. Then he added one condition. I want Miss Brooks assigned as the primary cultural liaison for this partnership. Non-negotiable. He looked directly into the camera. In 30 years of business, no one has ever corrected my own documents. I intend to keep Miss Brooks close, so it doesn't happen again. The room absorbed this in silence. Then Arthur Moore, 70 years old, co-founder, a man who had seen everything this industry could throw at him, stood up from his chair. Slowly, he brought his hands together, one clap, then another. Nadia joined, then a junior associate, then the legal counsel, then the whole room. Everyone except Derek Whitmore. Because Derek wasn't there anymore. Tiana didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just stood there, in the room she used to clean, and let it happen. After the call ended, Grant asked her to stay. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a leather-bound notebook, dark brown, high quality, the Caldwell & Moore logo embossed on the cover in gold. For the next chapter, he said. Tiana held it, opened it. The first page was blank, clean and white and waiting. She reached into her messenger bag and pulled out the moleskin, Reggie's notebook. Soft black cover, worn edges, 30 pages of his handwriting. The rest of it, hers. She set them side by side on the desk, the old and the new, the inherited and the earned, the invisible and the seen. I think I'll need both, she said. 1 week later, Tiana arrived at the 40th floor. Through the front elevator, during business hours, wearing clothes she had bought with her first advance paycheck. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just right. There was an office waiting for her. Small, but it had a window. And through that window, she could see the lake. The same lake she used to look at while mopping the lobby at midnight. On the door, a brass nameplate. Tiana Brooks, Senior Cultural Liaison, International Partnerships. She touched it, ran her fingertips across the letters. The same ink-stained fingers that had gripped a mop handle 3 weeks ago. The brass was cold. Her hands were warm. That morning, she walked through the lobby. Craig Patterson, the security guard who had stopped her at the elevator, saw her. He did a double take. Then he straightened up. "Good morning, Miss Brooks." She stopped, looked at him, not with anger, not with triumph, just recognition. "Good morning, Craig," and she kept walking. 2 months later, Derek Whitmore resigned. Nobody fired him. Nobody asked him to leave. The culture of the firm simply shifted, and he couldn't find his footing in the new version of it. Grant Caldwell accepted his resignation with one sentence. "I wish you'd looked closer, Derek, at a lot of things." 3 months after that, Tiana flew to Paris. Her first time on a plane. Her first time in Europe. Her first time walking into a room where a billionaire stood up to greet her, something his own staff said he had never done for anyone below a CEO. On Fontaine's desk, she noticed a framed note, handwritten. It read, "There is always someone listening." He saw her looking at it. He didn't explain. She didn't ask. They both knew. That same year, Tiana established a scholarship fund. She named it the Reginald Brooks Language Fellowship, for self-taught linguists from communities where talent exists, but opportunity doesn't. Fontaine co-funded it, not as charity, as consequence. The first recipient was a 19-year-old girl from the south side of Chicago who spoke 5 languages and worked the night shift at a gas station. She received a leather-bound notebook with her name engraved on the cover, and inside, on the first page, someone had written a single line in neat, careful handwriting. "A language is a door." Today, Tiana Brooks sits in an office on the 40th floor of a building she once cleaned. She still carries 2 notebooks. The old one, soft black cover, her grandfather's handwriting on the first 30 pages, hers on every page after. In the new one, leather-bound, gold-embossed, given to her by a man who saw what no one else bothered to look for. She still has ink on her fingers. Some things don't change. Some things shouldn't. And every evening, before she leaves, she does something no one asked her to do. She walks down to the 2nd floor, past the vending machine that hums too loud, past the wobbling chair no one ever fixed, past the clock on the wall that still ticks like it's counting down to something. She goes into the janitor's break room, and she leaves a book on the table. A language book. A different one every week. Spanish 1 week, Arabic the next, French, Mandarin, Portuguese, German, Russian. She doesn't sign her name. She doesn't leave a note explaining why. Just the book, spine cracked, pages dog-eared, the way a book looks when someone has actually used it, and a single post-it stuck to the cover. It always says the same thing. Every language is a door. She doesn't know who picks them up. She doesn't need to. Because somewhere in that building, every night, someone does. A janitor, a security guard, a woman on her break who's too tired to believe in anything, but too curious to stop reaching. She'll never meet most of them. She'll never know their names. But she knows they're there. Because the books are always gone by morning. And maybe one of them is sitting in that break room right now, turning a page. mouthing a word in a language no one expects them to know. The same way Tiana once did. The same way Reggie once did. On a train, surrounded by people who never learned his name, learning theirs. The door doesn't care who opens it. It just needs someone brave enough to reach for the handle. There are 40 million adults in the United States working jobs below their skill level right now. 40 million people. That's not a number. That's not a statistic you read and forget. That's a nation of invisible talent, hidden in plain sight, buried under uniforms and assumptions and doors that never opened. Self-taught multilingual individuals are among the least recognized talent pools in the American workforce. No degree to prove it, no certificate on the wall, no alumni network, no handshake from a dean, just the ability, real, tested, extraordinary ability, and a world that doesn't know where to put them. Only 20% of Americans speak a second language. Tiana speaks 9. She was never the exception. She was just the one who finally, after years of silence, got someone to listen. So here's what I'll ask you. Tonight, or tomorrow morning, look at the person who cleans your office, the one who drives your bus, the one who bags your groceries, swipes your badge, holds the door open while you walk through without looking back. Don't try to discover them. Don't perform kindness like it's a favor you're doing. Just see them. Say their name. Ask how they're doing. Not because you might find a genius, but because they're a human being standing right in front of you, and you've been looking through them your whole life. You have no idea what doors they've already opened inside their minds. No idea what languages they speak when no one is listening. No idea what they've taught themselves between midnight and sunrise while you're sleeping. And if you're in a position to hire, stop looking at the diploma. Start looking at the notebook, the one with no logo on it, the one with worn edges and ink-stained pages and 9 languages written in handwriting so small you'd need a magnifying glass to read it. That notebook might be worth $340 million. And the person holding it might be mopping your floor right now. If this story reminded you of someone, or if it reminded you of yourself, tell me. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, someone who's been overlooked, someone who's been told they're not enough, send it to them. Like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, talent doesn't wait for permission. It just needs one person to listen. Nah, for real though. Don't ever judge someone by how they look or the color of their skin. Everyone's got their own gift, bro. The smartest person in the room might be the one you walked past without even looking. Stop judging covers. Start seeing people. Nah, for real though. Don't ever judge someone by how they look or the color of their skin. Everyone's got their own gift, bro. The smartest person in the room might be the one you walked past without even looking. Stop judging covers. Start seeing people.